Recording is started for webinar number 19, Friday, April 13th, 2012, and we're here at 7 a.m. in Pacific time. This is Peter from what country, Peter?
Belgium.
Belgium. And he's going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, object-oriented programming in WINDEV environment. And we'll let him go. Thank you for doing this, by the way. And I'm looking forward to any other future topics.
Okay,
And I'm going to
you're all
move
welcome.
away. Okay. There you go, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So if there's any question, I would just suggest that is being raised. First, I wanted to do it a bit in a structured way. So first, I'll talk about a bit about.
Yeah, Peter,
myself,
that's a good idea, Peter.
Yeah.
If they have questions, we'll have them type it into the WinDev Skype chat. And,
Okay.
Either Dave or I will pick it up and maybe interrupt you when you at a good time, or if you say, is there any questions, then we'll ask you then. Okay?
Okay, excellent.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so first about myself. I'm Peter, as you all know. I'm from Europe, Belgium, 41 years old, working in the IT industry already for quite a while. First worked for the big corporations, always as a consultant, first for EDS, then for PricewaterhouseCoopers. At the later point in time, I became an IS manager for Estée Lauder & Company's Global IS. And since 2006, I have my own company and I'm self-employed. Throughout my career, I've always been, and I still am, mostly involved in large ERP rollouts and implementations, always from a technical point of view. So as an analyst programmer, I've done QAD MFG Pro in the 90s. So my first background was a Progress background on mostly Unix systems. As of end of 99, I rolled into, let's say, JD Edwards, which was then taken over by PeopleSoft, and with the takeover of PeopleSoft by Oracle, which is now an Oracle product. I also started with WINDEV in 99. That was version 5.5 at that time. So it was the first English version also that was available. Which I learned to know through a consultant I worked with during that era on one of the projects. So I loved it immediately, and actually I always, let's say, wrote custom software in it, and currently it makes out about like 35 to 40% of my revenue is development for specific customers in WX environment. And that is mostly in WINDEV and WebDev. So we're going to talk about object-oriented programming. Now, there's always a question, is OOP or object-oriented programming, is that the right paradigm to use in WX? Well, throughout, the first versions, 5.5, there were very few and very limited object-oriented features. Especially inheritance was not possible, so a lot of, let's say, like standard object-oriented paradigm stuff wasn't in there. But if you want to go OO or to object orientation, it isn't a must. I think there's many questions to ask, like what's the type of application that you're writing? Are you just writing a one-time off, quick and dirty, let's say, conversion program, or a very simple program that won't evolve much? Or are you looking at developing a distributed application, which will have a long time and and will evolve a lot during time? What's your target? Is it a single platform? Is it only a WINDEV application? Or will you have a multi-platform application that will make use of, let's say, WINDEV, WebDev, maybe a third-party app, and maybe some mobile stuff in there? So that's a very important question. What's the expected evolution of the application? Do you need to expose business functionality through APIs or web services? Are you writing something against an existing database, or are you able to construct your own database model? In case you're working with an existing database, how is it normalized? Is there a lot of redundancy in it, which makes things, let's say, from a CRUD point of view, so create, read, update, and delete point of view, a lot more complex to keep things aligned. And is there really a need for a strict single point of maintenance of the data? Which is, according to me, in any business application, is an absolute must to have a single point of maintenance. It also depends on how familiar you are with object orientation. I've been there. My background has been procedural until the early 2000s. Been playing a bit with .NET at that time as well. And it takes a bit of time to make the mindset move from procedural mindset to an object-oriented mindset. It takes time and, well, some trial and error as well. Always remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So object orientation requires in general that you do more analysis up front. The code at first sight is less readable, may seem more complex because you also make use of in WXN with a lot of indirection features, so where at runtime things will be determined. Using object orientation also makes you lose some of the 10 times faster features that are available in WINDEV because you just can't do it, let's say, the way the features provide, so you have to tweak a bit around it. Also, if you want to go in accordance with the academic paradigm and all the best practices, you can do that in WINDEV, but actually you lose all the 10 times faster features then. So you have to make a bit of compromise between that. But there are also advantages. So the fact that it takes more analysis effort, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think the more you think up front about what you're going to build or what you're going to do, the better the end result will be. Also, the fact that object-oriented code seems less readable or more complex is actually compensated completely by the fact that you have these typical object-oriented features like encapsulation. Actually, you encapsulate the data into your object. You can use inheritance, you have polymorphism, and you decouple actually functionality. So often it is, once you've written a class that works, actually you can like throw it away and never look back at it because it'll work for always. That's the ideal world, of course. But there's a lot of isolation in it, so that makes it easier. Now, is it a necessity to develop in an object-oriented way? I think that's a hard question because it depends on many factors. But there's one, let's say, typically for WINDEV or WX, I think if you're going to go for hybrid projects where you'll be using the different technologies from PCSoft, the Win part, the web part, and the mobile part. So I've given an example here. You have a back office part, you create a web customer self-service part, and you'll have a mobile part for example, Salesforce automation. Then the answer is yes. It's best to go in an object-oriented way because it allows you to easily isolate the business layer and the business logic from the user interface. Also, if you want to have a lot of code reusability or expose business functionality to third parties through web services or APIs, then I would say also yes, because you can actually pretty easily wrap your objects into web services in WINDEV. Okay, let's dive into it. What are the main components that I use in all my projects and that actually I reuse in almost all my projects? I have a my application class, which is like a singleton class because most of the methods and members that are in there are defined as constants or as global members. So a global member means that the member um, is shared between all the instances of the object. We'll see that later on. Typically, the MyApplication class is instantiated during the project initialization, and it manages all the ini file handling, the database connection, the login. There's a method to send emails. It also handles the highest level of exception handling and notifies, let's say, me as a developer of those exceptions. So, and actually, what you put in there is everything that is global to the application. Then there's also classes that actually I've written first time in 2004 and that haven't changed since, except for some minor cosmetic changes. And that's an error message and an error list class. And that is used to pass informational warning or error messages between objects, so throughout the call stack. Because you can have objects and one object instantiates another object, etc. But the end UI, which may be a report or a web page or a window, actually to notify back to the user, you need these objects to return feedback back from the user to your user interface. Then I typically have, yes?
Peter, a question on that error message. Do you inherit anything from the WINDEV environment for the error messaging, or you just did your own?
I just did my own. So what I put in those messages is that if an error or an exception from the runtime occurs, that also is communicated in that message. But we'll see that later on when we go through the example.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I have typically a single and a list class per business entity. So often that is equal to a database entity. So that's a class that actually manages the data I/O to the database and to the user interface. Usually it contains the 7 methods, which is record save, record add, record modify, record delete, record get by ID, refresh, and validate. Then there's also specialized classes like a string handler in case it's, for example, a connector to JD Edwards. I have a JDE handler classes that manages a lot of the specificities for that. And if it is necessary, I also have classes that are specialized for the user interface, but then actually for processing data to the user interface. So actually it makes not part of the business layer, so to speak, but it's hooked up to the user interface. So there's an important thing, and that's what I find a lack in PCSoft's RAD model, is actually if you run RAD in WINDEV or WebDev, it'll push too much actually on the database model. And modern applications, well, actually they tend to mash up different data into single screens, etc. So that doesn't work very well if you use RAD. Well, that's my opinion at least. Okay, that's about it. So we'll do the remote use of HFSQL in the cloud at the end. Yeah.
Peter, you had a UI. You said you had a UI class, but you probably have report classes too.
I haven't. Well, I have very limited reporting in most of the applications. Let's say the applications I'll be showing. I have some that I might exploit, but I haven't looked into them for this session. But I think this will definitely give food for thought to build your reporting classes as well. Okay. I've opened up two projects. I'm gonna connect first.
Darn, I was hoping to have the French one.
I have that too. So
No,
here's the French one.
I'm only kidding.
Okay. So I have my source code database that's also on the internet somewhere that I host. So I just disconnected because it may provide some delay in getting changing data. So we have a simple application. I first suggest we just make a quick run through it just to discuss. So what this application does, it's actually a system that allows in a franchise group of travel agencies that allows a call center to make calls or make appointments with them, but also that provides the different agencies a list of who's working on which potential prospect, so that they're not, let's say, calling or prospecting on each other's customers. It's a fairly simple application. Which runs also in the live environment against a HFSQL that is somewhere hosted on the internet. So what do we have here? So we have an application that provides a list of potential prospects in which people can filter. So, sorry, the interface is in Dutch. So you can see in which things can be, let's say, prospects can be searched for all the different agencies available in all possible statuses. So a prospect has its typical maintenance fiche, the agency it belongs to, it has notes, it has contact persons, there might have been appointments, contact moments, tasks related to that for specific employees, marketing, so there are newsletters, like who wants to receive newsletters by email or whatever, so this is where let's say customers or contact persons from these customers can subscribe or can be subscribed to these newsletters or removed. So if you just double click it, you'll see it's immediately a subscription for that customer. There's a classification, so in Europe there's a classification that is general, like in which branch, which type of business they are. So this is how they can be assigned to that. Historics, you can check where they are located, and there's a government side in which you see you can immediately find who belongs to it, what their social numbers are, etc. So what their balances are, etc. So pretty straightforward, just maintaining customers and, let's say, who's working on who. There's a lot of other functionality in there, like statuses. So it's actually the life cycle that a customer will be going through. So all of the entities or everything what you see here is developed in an object-oriented way. Now, what I wanted to do was actually, this is the data model. So fairly simple limited data model. So what I wanted to do with you guys, and I've prepared this, is, let's say, add a customer phone book to it, which is like a lot of possible phone book entries for a customer or a prospect that would be possible, in which we have an ID record, the customer it belongs to, the type it is, and so it could be phone work, phone private. So I've just prepared something pretty simple, so to speak, of the type of data that is stored in there. Additional explanation that could be provided, and the number or email that could be given. So, okay, we're going to join this to our customer, and we say nope, yep, yes. Okay, so far our data model. So this is where it all starts. Now the first thing we do is, I'm going to open up detail, is we're going to write our queries that we'll be using. It's also very important if you'll be using remote databases that are not in your local LAN, is actually to do as much as possible via queries. I'm going to create a new query. I'm going to do it through the editor, which is our query generic phone book. So where's our customer phone book? We're going to add the customer phone completely. We also want to have some customer data on that. So we want to know who it is, what the national number is, well, the language they're in. It's important if we call them. Now we're going to join this to language code. Yeah. One more from the customers. Well, okay, that's about it. Okay. So we're going to provide, because actually I tend to work with as few queries as possible, just because of a maintenance point of view. It has a drawback though, because a query, let's say a named query, can only exist once throughout the runtime. So if you want to reuse it at the same time, you have to create an alias for that. Okay. So we're going to do new conditions.
I didn't understand what you just said.
If you do, for example,
as far as one time.
I have a query here that's called query generic phone book. Now, if I execute it in screen 1, even with an independent hyperfile context flagged, that data source will be created and filled with the execution within that window. Now, if I re-execute it in a second window, it will override actually the contents of that data source, because it has the same name. So let's say data sources are unique, so to speak, in terms of queries. So you have to define alias for that. Yeah, that's it.
Kind of like an unthreaded file.
Yeah. So
well, you could define a data source and then create that as an alias to that query. So if you need it, but actually, you really rarely come into that kind of problem. I almost never have actually. Especially if you go into the OO way, because in the object-oriented way, because the fact is that actually we'll be transferring any query results into a set of objects, and actually we'll be working on the objects and not on the query results. So actually we already copied the data from the query into a list of objects. So typically I say, well, customer phone book. These are the possible selection criteria I foresee for the query. Is customer phone book ID lists. Okay, and well, typically also foresee as in the lists.
Dave, I can hear you typing.
Now let's see. Okay, that's our query. It's generic. I think we can use it for most purposes. Save it. Okay. So now, typically I also make a deletion query. I want to say, okay, deletion query for our phone book. Where is it? Ah, wrong screen. No,
So basically,
class,
for every table
with
that you have, you do
7
your 7
methods at least. So,
classes, or
which I'll be
queries?
copying just because it's actually pretty reusable.
7 methods. Okay. Okay.
Okay. We're going to say where is, I don't use always in the list, so add only one item. That'll work always. Customer phone book ID lists. And we also want to be able to delete everything for a specific customer. So customer ID lists. Okay. We're going to say, well, it's an OR. So
Yeah, don't delete the customer.
there we go. So actually, hold on. Wait. Clicked on something. Okay, so what you'll see is actually you always see three, well, at least three types of queries coming. So delete queries, duplicate check queries, and generic queries. So that's the three types that generally are used into a class. Okay, we have actually already our base in and output values. So we're gonna create the class now. For that, since it's so generic, and I'll go over the different methods step by step for you guys. So I'm just going to take simple class. So just take city, for example. City class, I'm going to say, well, save this as my phone book, customer phone book class. Okay. I'm going to say, well, in the class, I'm going to change city. Okay, I'm going to change it throughout the class. Well, it's a way of getting things done.
Naming convention is so important here, huh? To make it easy for
I'm going to reopen our query.
search and replace. Oh yeah.
Query. Phone book. Oops. Okay. Okay.
Lower, lower. You got generic phone book. No, you right there. Yeah. Not customer phone book, but just phone book. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. I'm going to take the SQL code.
Easy
so
refactoring,
to get my
right?
members. Control C. And actually, see these will be my members. So this is a bit of where you don't have the 10 times faster, but it works for me. So the idea remains. Yeah, what I tend to do if it's a huge query, what I tend to do is take the
Is there a
SQL
way to
code.
dump that out from somewhere?
Then this is, well, tweaking it a bit.
Uh-huh.
There is a way to use it through through WINDEV as well, because you can, based on your class, generate UML model on your file, but then it's only the file. And since, let's say, each class represents complete business object, so relate with all its related files or related tables, so to speak, into it, you always still have to type a lot of stuff yourself. So, but this is a way to do it, and just say, okay, I'm gonna page. I'm gonna change S by a pipe. Okay, then do, this is just tweaking a bit, but it's a way to do it. And then just say, I want to have this separated, yeah, by a pipe. There you go. So, and now you have, and now do Control H.
We like tricks, don't we?
Remove the comma with nothing. So, tricks. Okay,
We like tricks, man.
This is int. This is an int. String. Yes, string. Okay, all our members are in there from the query. So I'm just gonna say, well, we're not gonna check duplicates. So this is actually one of the 7 classes that we have. So you see, in every method, or in most methods, what we pass in is this error list object that I've told you about. So these 2 classes. I have an error list and I have an error message class. So actually, to communicate everything that's gone wrong throughout the call stack, that is passed through this error list, and that is passed by as a pointer, so by reference. Now we're going to see that everything is filled in. So what are we going to check? We're going to have a phone book type, which is an int. So the phone book type is less than or equal to 0. Then we're going to say it's a data error. We're going to say phone book entry needs to be hooked up to a customer. Oh no, to a type, needs to be of a type, sorry. ID. So this is actually the business rules that we're writing. What are the business rules that this entity needs to adhere to? Yeah, well, the validate method actually validates.
So you isolate it all under here under
validate. The phone book
validate.
entry adheres to the rules required. And if there's anything wrong with it, it will communicate it back through the error list object. Yeah, the built-in business rules is only for documentation purposes.
This is opposed to the built-in business rule.
It allows you to. No. It just documents. It allows you to document the business rules.
Ah, gotcha.
It needs to be hooked up to a
It's
customer.
not no logic like this.
Else? So you see what we pass in actually. So we see we have here a error message, which is declared locally. In the beginning, we say, this is, I don't know if you understand this. So actually we say, validate receives a list with errors. So the second time a user clicks on OK and validate is executed again, we want to make sure that everything from the first time when the user executed validate is cleared. So actually what this does, it says, well, for this list that we've passed, clear every or any message that has been set by this function previously. Because otherwise, if the user would click 3 times on OK, you would execute 3 times the validate function. Well, everything would remain in that list. So if you had like 3 errors, you would have 9 after 3 clicks. So this thing makes sure that the second time that a user clicks, let's say everything from the first time we went through validate is cleared. So this debug info thing just say, okay, for this validate, so clear everything that is in that list, which refers to this object instance and the validate method. So this is runtime, actually runtime data from the runtime engine. Okay, let's see. I think this is enough to. Well, I'm going to say that empty, so something is filled in at least. Is it phone book entry? I don't recall. Phone book entry, I guess. Equals blank. Then no phone. No, I used to do it in the past,
You
but
don't turn on your
in the beginning, but then it was if
They
you
call
changed
that
it, and then it got all messed up,
where they
etc.
put
And
the
so
letter in front.
I don't use it anymore.
The charter.
Maybe it became better over time, but I think they introduced it in V12. And in the beginning I used it, but in the end it became just a mess. So probably it's better by now. Okay, so that's it. And you know what? Yeah.
I was just thinking because with the charter, then it would have been easy. It would be easy to set up that initial part where you
no, but then that won't work anymore because these actually. No, it will work.
Like here equals 0.
Because these have to be identical to your data source names. That's important. Yeah, and that's that's true. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
And that would
probably I haven't looked at it anymore
right?
since a couple of years, so I might try it again because you can just activate it and it will automatically rename all the things. I know
I'm trying to
the,
decide for myself
last
which way to go.
P16 they announced
yeah,
some good things in that area. Okay. Okay, what do we have then? Then we have a rec_save method, and now if we go and look into this class, I'm just going to save this for a minute. So where's my customer phone book? So what you see is actually that the addition of a record and the modification of a record, those are private, those are in red. So it means they are only accessible from within the class. So the only method that is exposed to the programmer from other objects like windows or reports or whatever is the save method. So again, what we get here is we send in our error lists and we say if after whatever action has been done, if the record needs to be refreshed or not, because we will still be using it, for example, in our screen or in whatever where we are using it. So if you have an OK button and you close the window, there's no need to get the data or execute the query again and refresh it. So by default, it's false. But if you still will be working on it, for example, within a window, you might want to have everything refreshed. If you would be reusing the same instance of the object.
So if you have continuous add mode, you would have
then again
you would have it refresh because true.
Clear from whatever we previously, if we previously have gone through this. We execute validate. So if whatever has been passed is valid, then we can continue with our save actually. Also we check because if warnings have been confirmed by the user. So typically in a window, if he presses OK and you have a warning that allows you to save the record, but we just want to make sure that the user actually reviewed the warning, so he'll have to press OK again. So actually we say if the user, if there are warnings actually, so we say in the error lists, get the number of warnings we have, if that's bigger than 0, and the user hasn't reviewed any warning, then say, okay, we reviewed the warnings, but first return and display the message to the user. So request him to confirm it. So next time we'll just go through it. So this is generic. You see, this is generic for every class that's in there. So just copy and paste. So next we check, okay, if we have a 0 value in our unique key, that means we're adding a record. So we set the timestamps. It's created by, you see this my application, this global thing, which provides the current user that's hooked onto it. So we set the audit trail values, and we execute the record add function, which is nothing more than going through it. Customer phone book. You see, which does nothing more than add
So
it
you
to
get to
the,
use your singleton
see
right there. Huh?
the file name we've provided as a constant in the declaration of our class. See, so this is the same for every class. So it's generic. You don't have to change a single line of code for that. Okay, let's go back. Okay, we add the record. That's it. So if we can't add it, result false. You see, and actually, you see again to the record add, we add the error list object. So you see, whatever is encountered, so it passes through this, goes through this, and whatever is filled up, once it comes back to the window that called this method, so everything from within the stack, if there are any issues, will have been provided to that list. Okay. If so, we added the records. So we say like this is Indirection. You see, it's just the values that we've added up there. We say like, okay, this file name plus this field name based on the variables. We just put it into the customer phone book ID record. And if it needs to be refreshed, we execute the refresh method, which is the same as you see. This is also Indirection again. We set the parameter. So we say the query name plus the file name, which if we go all the way back up, we say the query generic customer phone book dot p customer phone book ID list. That's actually what it does. Set that to the unique ID that's passed in. Execute query, read it, drop whatever is in the query results into myself, into the object, into the instance, which will refresh all these members in here with the results of the query. Is that still clear? Okay, so we're in.
It's clear to me. Does anybody have any? Raise your hand or type something in the Skype.
Just a comment that I mean the business logic in this particular class is sort of restricted to.
Indeed,
you know,
and I have those kind of
validating,
classes as well,
updating.
but I think it would make it way too complex for people who are, or let's say, who are starters in WINDEV to actually get it. So I certainly have, let's say, methods in which you will see a lot of additional methods. No, that's true. So
Yeah, I just
I have several
wanted people to
classes
sort of have
that
the idea that
have a lot of additional messages. Hold on, I'm just looking for someone. Just looking for someone, I think, for the customer. So you'll see here a lot of, let's say, additional change expiration date. So this all triggers a lot of additional stuff, which is then also based on additions or modifications, and that triggers off other instances, other classes, that triggers review processes, etc. So you can bring it wherever you want, but let's say, I think once you have the base system in place, you can easily add any additional processing into, let's say, the save method. You can say, well, if it's add, you can I even have, let's say, classes that start a transaction block just before it adds, does a lot of other stuff, instantiates a lot of other objects, does all the stuff, and if everything comes back okay, then only commits the transaction in the end, and otherwise it rolls it back. Yeah, but yeah, you have to make this distinction between, I think, database triggers.
I think the key word you said was trigger,
or,
because it could be
let's say,
triggers in
application
the
logic triggers,
back end
which
too,
would
right?
be part of the
that's
code.
what you're doing. You can do in these classes.
The database trigger fires off on a database event, and actually you don't have control over it anymore. It just fires off at a certain point in time. Depends on it. Do you want to? Does it need to be in a single transaction? Then you'll have to put it in here.
Do you favor putting it all in here?
So it depends on the transaction scoping that is required to maintain integrity in a database and in the business logic, of course.
I gotcha. Multiple things going on.
So we have the addition of a record and we have the updating of a record, you see, which does nothing more than say, okay, for what's important if you do an update is that you will have to create the database context first again. So you have to get the current record again to create the database context and then update it. Okay, so actually where you have the screen to file, which most of you guys would be using, this is, in the case of classes, is memory to file. So it means it'll update the members of myself that match the database file name. It will copy those into the record buffer. Okay, this is about it. I think you see we've changed 5 lines of code and we have a working class. Let's see. No, we still have to make a little change here. You see, this is where from one there are dependent records. Say I'll just move this out. Just for the sake of the purpose of the example. So, and this is then the deletion class. So we have a bug-free class. That's what it is. You see, this is where an error from the runtime would be passed back to the user. So we execute a query that is a deletion query. So if anything went wrong with that, we pass into our error lists a message to the user in which we say, well, we have a database error. I couldn't delete the records. Well, and here are the errors that the database has provided us back. So those are communicated also back through the call stack. Yeah. This one? Well, I don't know if you see the right hand of my screen.
Hey, Peter. Besides that drop list of methods that you have up there, how do you call up all your classes? You just do.
Yeah.
Those are the drop lists right there up on top there.
Yeah, the same list. Yeah.
That's your. That's
all the objects.
No. Right. That's all your.
These are the methods within this class.
But up there on the top,
it's like in
the second,
that's
the same list, right?
You have the events,
classes.
I think that's called.
And the one on the right is the list of the highlighted class methods, right?
Okay, and if you want to have all code for an object, you know, it's
Bob was
here. So. We'll just provide you everything in one big list. Okay, there's one more object to create. And we're also gonna just make a copy for that. And we're gonna say let's do seed lists. I'm gonna say okay. I'm gonna save this as customer phone book. I'm gonna say my customer phone book list is an array of QM customer phone book. That's it. Okay, our queries. Hold on, what am I doing? Okay, let's see, how are we going to implement this now? So now we're about to implement our classes into a window. Well, two windows actually. We'll do classic way, one maintenance and one detail window. I'm just going to see if I can reuse one, which is just a pretty simple one. Trying to find a simple one. Browse, it's double one. Task type browse. Okay, this is a simple one. Okay, I'm gonna do save as. I'm gonna make this say customer phone book browse. I'm gonna go to the code. We have a customer phone book browse. I'm gonna say well, actually this is rename it everywhere. I'm gonna say this is a phone book lists. Good. Now we're gonna hook this up to a variable which is customer phone book lists. Stored variable is our customer phone book ID. Okay, we're gonna say link is customer phone book ID. Ideally, you rename this, of course, customer phone book ID. Valid, we don't have that, so we'll delete that. Delete that. Make this our phone book type. And this is a number books. Which now we're going to say this is the number. No, well, let's call it the customer organization. Duplicate this and say number. Created by is created by. Okay. Now on search, let's say we don't have the selector anymore, so this is not necessary. Very generic phone book. I'll explain in a second. And afterwards we free all resources since it's in an array of objects and we display. Okay. So what this does is the execute query. So you could set parameters to your query here. We don't do that. We just execute the query generic customer. If it executed, we put the result of the query generic customer phone book into our array of customer phone book entries, which we defined at the beginning of the let's say as a global to the window. And we free the resources and display whatever in there. And during because our queries are breakable, because the database is on the internet, so if it takes a long time, we want users to be able to kill it. We display cancel query, which says press escape to cancel the query. So if they press that during that, the query execution will be cancelled. Okay, we have a new, we don't have that window yet, so I'll just cut out this code. We'll test this first. Comment out. Work, we'll already say like task type, this is a phone book is a QM customer phone book. If we are able to delete, see, we instantiate this for all the selected rows, we request to the user, do you really want to delete all these records? And we say, okay, for all the selected rows, we instantiate a customer phone book object and we request it to delete it. So if it wasn't able to delete it, we say, okay, we have a counter failed, a counter success, and a counter processed. So, and if we have an error occurred, we say well, let's say we inform the user that from that many records that were selected, we weren't able to delete those ones, and that he can see the details in a pop-up window, which will display the error lists. See, here it comes again. So we have a single error list that is passed all the way through everything, and if everything happens for any of the records, it's all filled to that error list, which we can then process to the user to provide that to him. Okay, still have a link issue. What it says, I want to have it. So no errors anymore. A few local variables, but that's for later. So I'm just gonna create the table first by doing a check, connecting to the database. Okay, normally it should be okay. Table should be there. Oh. So let's do the IBER file. Let's see a few customer numbers. So 2, 3, 8, 9, 11. Making some records. Fund entry. Okay. We have some records in there. So if everything goes well, we should be able to test this window. Should be up and running. Here. There we are. We have a working class implementation. That works. So we're going to make the detail window. We're going to copy a simple one that's somewhere in here. Yeah, should do. And we'll call this customer phone book edit. See what we have here. We have the declaration of our main objects. So we're gonna expect a customer phone book ID, of course, if you want to change one. Okay, we have a book. Need any of these? We don't have any combos that are filled from other values. So you see, this is also if we would have multiple selections, so combos that are filled by other values. We also use this via the class implementations of those specific objects with their list implementation. For example, in this case, countries and regions that are hooked up to those combo boxes. We have again an error list object because we will have a validation there, so that will be passed on to the classes. And to make it dynamic, and because it may change on the number of I say or I define which on which number the validate, which tab number the validate page is actually, so in order to display any messages. Okay, so if we receive a customer phone book, this is pretty clear. We're going to say, okay, our customer phone book, which we instantiate here, please refresh with its ID. And if we can refresh it, so if one is found, please do source to stream. In the other case, notify the user that the record couldn't be found and that it possibly might have been deleted in the meantime, and close the window again to go back to the previous screen. In the other case, if no phone book ID was passed, we just do a source to stream of the empty object. Okay, we don't need these things anymore because we don't have regions and countries. We just display the blank customer phone book object. Okay, this is about it. Now we're gonna hook up these things. Okay, I'm just gonna say like the link will be from our variable, our customer phone book idea. So I tend to put it. It's not a requirement into a label because it provides more easy debugging features if you see the number that's on the screen. So, what do we have here? Moving this to our variable phone book. Okay, we still need to provide a feature to get the customer ID number. I'll just make something simple for that, because otherwise it would take us too far. Okay, we have a phone book entry. That's it. Let's see, I'll call this. This. Phone book entry. You know what? I'll just go to this, go to my phone book. Here we are. And I'm just gonna do the customer ID. So, no, I don't want that way. Normally you would provide a lookup here to get a customer ID, or you could pass it in as a parameter, so from a customer screen. So customer ID. Just for the sake of the example. Okay, we're going to say we're going to have a phone book type. How do you mean? Half? Yeah, but
is there a 10 times faster way to like
no, but maybe the RID will do. I never looked into that.
Is it easier for you to do it
but
this
that
way?
only creates the interface.
You know, to generate something that's close and then eliminate or add to something that was created.
Again, I played in the early years with
find that it
with the RAD.
too much junk. Yeah.
But yeah, okay, it's okay but it pushes so much on the data model. So if you really want to have these complex overview screens or
RID is the
dashboard-like
user
screens,
interface.
then actually it's impossible
Right?
to get that done. Okay, so we have our phone book entry. So now actually, you see if I open this, so which I dragged from the data model, so if I look at the link, you see it's linked to the analysis currently. So I'm just going to modify the link from the analysis, in this case to the phone book type variable from the class, and the explanation. You see, it's again, I don't want it from the analysis, but I want to have it on the where was it? Explanation. Okay, this is it. So these fields are there. I'm just gonna tab. And say, okay, this is created by. That's what I mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation earlier, is that, well, you can't have it all. So there's a price if you want to do it this way. But it provides that on top of actually that object, I can now also make a mobile screen and make a web page using any of the three products, but actually just reuse the single objects. Okay, I think we're there.
I'm thinking maybe we should just kind of you should hit that point again, because I think
from a
that's,
maintenance point of view, that is
your alternative.
that's
If you were
horrendous.
to create sort of three different, web and mobile and desktop.
And I think certainly that PC software will be
of the
working
same
to it, but
functionality,
it's, I think, yeah,
you would
actually
end up,
that only as of
basically what I guess
V15,
copying
that actually
copying
WebDev,
and
and now with
pasting
the
your
iOS, that as
validation
of
code and so
V17,
forth,
that actually,
correct?
let's say, the combination of the three products is actually now just getting
Yeah.
momentum.
Yeah, because it'd be all in different products versus the
I
class
expect
would
them
be all
to
pointed
probably
to the same
work a bit more on that
set of source.
on the long term. But now, if you use their RAD, actually, it's, like the RAD over in the three products, but actually just duplicates everything in the three products. So, which means if you have maintenance, you have the maintenance in threefold. Okay, now getting back there to our objects. We had our
Yeah, I can see
browse,
how
so
if you're trying to deliver one set of functionality on more than one platform, you'd almost have to be crazy not to take an approach like this.
Really crazy.
This will be when and on the edit system custom damn. Should have first uncommented the code. Okay. So I'm just going to leave this out because actually this refreshes the record in the table. So So this is actually a warning that says, well, if you have selected more than 10 lines, it says, are you sure? Because it'll open up 10 windows. Because what you see is modern applications tend to be non-modal, so which means that you have very few, let's say, blocking windows. So I tend to open windows always in non-modal way, so they're actually opened as sibling windows. You can still continue working on other stuff, or you can even compare different screens with. Okay, and this will be then. Okay, I think we're there to test. So list, we can add a new record. So just for the sake of the idea, I'm implement a lookup for a customer, which I certainly have. I'm gonna 18, 20, 21. So we're gonna create one for 18. Well, actually, we'll do a save. You see, the validate that we've written comes back with, it says, okay, your phone book entry needs to be of a type, that should be. A phone book entry needs to be hooked up to a customer, and it provides a warning. There's no phone number or email provided. The database was not updated. So okay, we're gonna do 21 now. We're gonna do again. You see, damn, wrong there. Just gonna see if it works for. Okay. We still need to link one thing to the screen. So there, we haven't linked that up to the customer ID. You see, this is our file to screen. Actually, our screen to file is actually a screen to source into the object instance. So 23, give it a private phone, whatever. I'm gonna say okay. This is the one that we've added, and if we look into the database, see it's there as well. So now in the warning message, so we'll create a new one. This one still fax work, and we don't fill in. So you see, we have a warning, but if we press OK again, it's saved anyway. And if we edit it, you see we go into the screen in edit mode. So this is our class model is implemented. So far, any questions?
Let's see. There were some questions, but let's see. We're not related to what you're doing, but
overloading
Andy
is
Stapleson
typically
says,
you can have as
can
of
you kind of
16,
show
I
how
think,
you
multiple
overload a
signatures
method?
for a method.
Like if you're
But
doing it,
overloading is typically done
oh yeah, you can see
also
it
when
there.
you use inheritance. I don't know,
Not
I could
for
go
the,
into it, but I don't know if that would bring us maybe too far, especially since I still want to also to explain on the remote HFSQL
up.
on the
Right, yeah.
remote use of remote databases. Well, it's a few best practices in there. Well, let's say it takes like 10 minutes. Okay, so what I use is I use HFSQL, let's say,
Yeah,
in the
me.
cloud. This is for just basic like these. These are very let's say the application I showed now is just a pretty basic, very limited
We
type of
might have to do
application.
that
It's not the
another
sort of
time
ERP
because it's already.
environments I tend to work in. But it works
Oh,
very
okay.
well for
Yeah,
this
go
type
ahead,
of
because
applications, and it's
okay.
pretty cheap to do as
Go
well.
ahead and do that then.
So what are the guidelines if you want to use or connect to a remote database on the internet? If you use hypervised SQL, like that. So if you use hypervised SQL, before you make the final connection in your application, so that's why you see there's a little delay when I tend to connect when the application loads. So when describing a connection to an hyperfile server, you can test the quality of the connection to see if you want to have it in a compressed mode or in a
Can you put
uncompressed
that?
mode. So which
Could
means
you put that on the
that if you have a
slide?
slow line,
Yeah,
that
thanks.
actually
Yeah,
it
thanks.
will benefit you, or let's say the loss of time for compressing it on the server side and uncompressing it on the client side actually makes you gain over the slow connection. So then you use a compressed connection. So you can test that when setting up the connection. That's with H quality connection that you can do that. Also, let's say implement multi-record request always with queries. Let's say HExecuteQuery or HExecuteSQLQuery. This means that you'll only have one request answer to go over the network. While if you do if you go through it with an HRead next, you have all this going forth between the server and your client software. Also note that ideally you create your queries with the query editor. I also have a huge background in, let's say, Microsoft SQL and even Oracle databases. So the things I write there as sort of queries to create views, etc. If it really becomes complex, the query editor can handle it. But let's say for 99% of your typical transactional data, it's best to create your queries in the query editor. As I showed you, I tend to create one query with all the possible parameters actually that could cover, let's say, any request. So actually I have one query that is just executed for any kind of request. Some of the more complex ones have up to 40 parameters that can be passed. The trick is if you don't pass any parameter, it's neglected by the engine. So it only takes the parameters that you pass into the query into account. It also provides reusability if you use the query editor. It also makes sure that your queries remain in sync with your analysis. So if you change something in the analysis, that is synchronized into the query. While as you type SQL into the code editor, let's say any changes in the data model might break the execution of your query at runtime. And also, this is something I got from one of these TDFs. is that queries created with the editor are protected against SQL injection by the runtime. And also in the query editor, you can right-click where the editor will actually analyze for you if you have all the indexes in place for the best performance for the query. Now, if you have one big query that might cover, like I do, that covers, let's say, like 99% of all possible requests, then the optimizer, of course, might or will provide you a possibly wrong optimization suggestion, because actually you will not use it with all its parameters. You can implement single record requests just by using H commands, so that you don't have to execute the query, which is a bit faster than, let's say, setting up the query and by the server and having all the, let's say, the query overhead on top of it. Also, if you have, let's say, like static or slowly changing dimensions in your database, typically like company data or, let's say, languages, some sort of constant data, it might be useful to just load that in memory upon start of the application, or just execute the query the first time and just keep it alive throughout the lifespan of the session. And also, don't hook up your tables or loopers directly to files or queries, because that will really slow things very much down. Okay, this is the tip. So now, if I run one of these applications, let's say against a server. So the server is 300 miles, 400 kilometers away from here. It's hosted nearby Paris. You see, it acts now. This is a very limited database, but you see, this is with a hyperfile SQL in the background, and you see it. It's still pretty snappy if you go over it. This is, let's say, implementation of a tree view, which is also done in a class, so in which people can define the preferences of their travel. So just say, okay, I want to go for a cruise. See, it'll add, the record is added to the database for the cruise, and someone can add comments to that. So I think there was a question yesterday regarding how to do this kind of reflexive join through a class model. If you want, I can quickly show you through the control and how it's set up. Would anybody be interested in that? Yeah? Okay, that's fine. No, but that's fine. But actually, I covered everything that I want. I hope it okay. Anyway, I have to stop myself in about 10 minutes, so that would be good. Okay, so definitely, if there's something of interest in which I think I can be of help, I certainly will do.
Yeah, I kind of want you to come back. That's all.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. So can we stop now?
Well,
and then
yeah, and
maybe
that is one of the
schedule
limitations in WINDEV. What I miss actually in this is that there's no object relational mapper, as you say.
I know.
But it's
Oh, I think you have even brainstorming some things with you would be really kind of fun.
That's true.
To do. Okay.
This is some really cool
Anyway,
stuff.
yeah, I think we could kind of like come up with an idea and develop something like ORM or something.
No, definitely, because there's also quite some fuzzy logic into it.
Yeah, because that would make it possible to then sort of further separate the business logic from the database access, which would, kind of improve some of the testability probably too and stuff like that. But yeah, an ORM is it's a non-trivial thing. It's
okay.
To have something that's really general and yet does the
classic
job
place.
is not easy to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Glad to have been there, and thanks for waking up so early.
And,
okay.
We will have a survey, by the way, out in the next 2 weeks about something that we're going